All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I know it was a minute longer than normal, but thank you for queuing up early. Thanks again if anybody's come to several of these events, but my name is Ryan Nash. I'm the CEO of Gust. I'm very happy to be joined by Stephen and Mitch from Forecastr today. This is probably our 8th event, maybe 9th that we've done over the last year or so. But Forecastr and Gust are super well aligned, and we're two companies that want to help take a lot of the junk out of running a startup and fundraising so that you can focus on your business and execute well rather than getting all bogged down in some of the stuff that comes and sneaks up and wastes your time. For us, it's all back office, stop grants, cap table management, legal agreements, contractor agreements, being sure your house is in good order and running your back office. Forecastr, everything about financial projections. One thing we run into a lot with our free public platform is people end up on the financial tabs of their company profile and they're like, oh, what do I put here? And the forecasts that they put there, the things that they upload have a great weighing on, one, the possible investability of the company seeking fundraising, and two, the topic of today's presentation is how do you actually use a forecast to run your company? It's not just a thing that a puff piece you put together to tell investors you're going to be a billionaire. It's something that can be actually of great value to running your business day to day. And I will say anecdotally from personal experience with other founders and from running a startup myself, if you don't have your forecasts in order and your financials, you can run out of money quickly, or you can make guesses and observations about your market, your company's viability, your survivability, and your runway. When they prove to be wrong, you can go out of business. And that's one of the reasons people fail a lot, is just not doing this kind of diligence or actually infusing that into that. So I meant to do a brief introduction because I'm under the weather today, but I went longer than normal, probably because I have a foggy brain from it. But Stephen's going to do most of the presentation here. The focus is on, running your company with your forecast. And Stephen, take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it, man. And nice to meet everybody here virtually. I'm Stephen, the CEO of Forecastr, and I'm joined here with Mitch, who's growth manager at Forecastr, and I'll talk a little bit more about myself. But yeah, just really appreciate this opportunity, Ryan, and getting to know the Gust team. It's a great team, and it's a great product that you guys have and a great service. So I will share my screen here to get rolling. And I think I just did that. So
the graphics have greatly improved this time around.
Yes, we are leveling up our game over here at Forecastr. But yeah, just like Ryan said, topic of the day is about how to leverage a financial model to supercharge your business, to run your company. And we do a number of these expert webinars with respect to financial modeling and startup finance and stuff like that. And I will say that this is definitely my favorite one, and the reason for that is that it's absolutely the one that has the most value. So many folks that we talk to and work with, when they come to us, they think of a financial model as something that they need to do for investors or for raising capital or to check a box, and those things are all true. A financial model is a huge weapon in a fundraising environment. You should absolutely use it when you're talking with investors. It'll increase the chances that they invest in you. But the real value of a financial model is running your business and helping you hit your growth targets and helping you avoid running out of cash. And I think the cautionary tale that Ryan alluded to is so true. I've been a fractional head of finance for lots of companies. I've seen it happen time and time again, where it's a great business, great company, they're doing well, but they just don't have their eye on the ball from a financial perspective. They maybe come to me too late, or there's a company that I'm advising, and they just end up failing because they really just made an unforced error, and it doesn't need to be that way. So we're going to talk about how you can avoid doing that in your own business, and very honored to do it. First things first, I'll just introduce myself. And so I'm Stephen Plappert. I'm the CEO of a company called Forecastr. We do online financial models for startups. So if you need a great financial model and you need a place to manage it, we're a great solution for that. We've raised over $5 million in venture capital. I've built well over 200 financial models for companies of all shapes and sizes. So guarantee you, we've seen a company that looks pretty similar to you and could definitely help you. I've been the head of finance for a lot of companies as well before Forecastr, and after my first company, Fantasy Hub, I was a fractional head of finance for a variety of early stage startups, and that's kind of where we got the idea to start Forecastr, was out of that experience. And Logan Burchett, my co-founder and COO, we were actually working together in that capacity, and just building financial models for companies, helping them raise money, helping them manage their cash. And we're like, hey, you know, there's got to be a better way than Excel to do this stuff. And that's why we built Forecastr. You know, it's to really help founders that aren't finance experts. They're not kind of classically trained in finance like Logan and I. We really want to bring down the barrier to entry on getting them a great financial model. So that's a little bit about me, and a little bit about just kind of what qualifies me, I guess, to speak on topics like this. I've been in startups for 10 years and in startup finance that whole time. As for Forecastr, Forecastr is an online financial modeling platform. So it's an alternative to Excel for building and managing a financial model. It's online, and we're building a lot of features into it, which I think it makes it a lot more user-friendly and a lot more scalable than a spreadsheet. You know, you can integrate it with your QuickBooks. That's something that we're working on right now. We want to build analytical feature sets and reporting out of the box. We'll be working on that this year. But even just, you know, more basic than that, it has a really nice user experience. It kind of organizes everything for you, so you don't have to think too much about it. It produces your financial statements automatically, and we actually do white glove onboarding too. So we work with a lot of Gust companies. We do a 30-day white glove onboarding where you work with our financial modeling experts to get a great model for your company. So I think that can be really, really beneficial. And if you're interested, definitely do check us out. Our website is forecastr.co, and I'm sure Mitch will put some resources there in the chat. We'd love to talk with you, help you, get you started. So let us know. But otherwise, the agenda of today. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. First things first, we just want to get on the same page with what is a financial model. So we'll talk a little bit about the power of a great financial model. We'll make sure that we're all thinking about the same thing when we talk about a financial model. But then, you know, today isn't about how to build one or anything like that. Today is about how to use one to run your business. And so we're going to really be focused in on how do we use a model like offensively? How do we use it to supercharge the business, to make sure we hit those growth targets, to, you know, make sure that we hit our milestones, that we have the success that we want to have as a founder, and build a great company. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how to use your model defensively. You know, I mean, how do we use it to avoid running out of cash? What should we be doing every month to make sure that our company stays on track, it stays on the rails, it doesn't, if we don't kind of stray too far or we don't run off the cliff. Like there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things that can kill you in this line of work. And I'll show you a little bit about how a financial model can help you avoid, you know, some of those, making some of those mistakes. And then I think seeing is believing. So in all of the webinars that we do, we always want to really make it very tangible and actionable. So we're going to spend the first half of it, you know, on 1, 2, and 3, and then the second half, we're actually going to switch gears, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how we do this at Forecastr. You know, I think we have really good financial health and financial hygiene, and I'll show you exactly what we do every month, kind of our monthly playbook to use our financial model to achieve some of these objectives. And hopefully that really kind of crystallizes this, and then we should have plenty of time for some Q&A. So that is the agenda for the day. So we'll start out with, you know, what is a financial model? Let's all get on the same page on that. And we think of a financial model as a business simulator. So really, I think that's the best way to think about it, is like, imagine just simulating your business into the future. Imagine you had kind of a mathematical representation of your business. You know, kind of coded your business into a video game, right? And just simulated it into the future. What would it look like? How would it grow? And how much resources would you need to achieve your goals and things like that? It's really taking your business on a virtual test track. And the purpose of doing all that is to, you know, see problems before they happen, right? So when you're very first starting a business, you want to simulate it forward so you can see, hey, is this business even worth starting? Like, can I make a lot of money doing this? You know, is it a viable business? Are there good margins, things like that? But also answering questions like, how much investment that do I need in order to start it, or how many customers do I need in order to hit my milestone to raise a seed round. Like all these questions that you may have, they're very complicated to just try to answer it in your head. It can be kind of tough. But if you have a financial model that lays this stuff out, it can be a lot easier to get the answers. And not a silver bullet, not a crystal ball. It doesn't tell the future, but it can help guide you in making more data-driven decisions. So think about it that way. Think about a financial model as a business simulator. That's how we view it. So and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Kind of how can we use that simulation to achieve better purposes and ultimately make better decisions. So some of the things that a financial model can do, and this is really the power of the financial model, is answering some of those questions. We have all these questions, we need answers. We break them down into 5 main categories, and so you guys can think about it in this way. There's a lot more questions than just this, but customer acquisition, like in your financial model, you would represent the channels you use to acquire customers, whether that's inbound sales or outbound sales or paid ads or content marketing or email marketing or organic search. You're going to list those out, and it's going to answer the question, how are we acquiring customers? The model's not going to acquire any customers for you, but it'll help you answer the question how, both for yourself and for investors. And then revenue and monetization, like you would put in your revenue streams there. Maybe it's subscription, maybe it's e-commerce, maybe you sell a medical device, but how are you monetizing those customers? How are you turning those customers into dollars? It's going to describe that and simulate that. People and hiring, like, okay, if we have all these customers and we have all this revenue, like, who do we need to hire to actually execute that plan? If we've got a bunch of paid ads in there, who's managing that? If we're doing a bunch of sales, how many salespeople do we need? Maybe there's an onboarding like there is in my business, and how are we going to do that? Who do we need in order to do that onboarding or service the customer? What about developers, things to build the product? Like, we kind of sketch all that out, and you have a nice hiring plan that you can look at and adjust and simulate. Then expenses, like you got customers, you got revenue, you got all your people. Those are usually kind of the lion's share of the expenses, but what else do you need to run the business? Like, what about software? What about payment processing? What about your marketing budget? What about travel? What about professional fees? Or maybe there's kind of a miscellaneous category. What about bake a little buffer, there into the forecast and into the simulation? That can be good. So kind of good thing to just sketch out, your expenses. And then ultimately investment is that 5th category for us. It's like, if you have a good handle on the customers, the revenue, the people, the expenses, all that kind of stuff, then you're trying to answer the question, well, okay, do I need to raise money? If so, how much do I need to raise? How am I going to fund my company's growth? And it'll start to kind of spark some other conversations around, okay, like it looks like in the model I need about $1 million to get 18 months worth of runway. How am I going to go get that million? And that'll take you on a certain path to go get some fundraising done. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about how to use a model for fundraising, that's something that we do a webinar as well, one on how to use a model to close checks, and I think that one's really neat as well. We've done that one with Gust a number of times, and we'll be doing it again, I'm sure. So tune in for that. But yeah, these are just some of the questions that a financial model can answer. So business simulator answers the tough questions, or rather helps you answer the tough questions. So with that in mind, like, let's talk about how do we use the model to supercharge the business. Like, we have a model, it's simulating our business into the future. Great, we've built it. Maybe we just came off the back of a fundraise and we've raised some money. Now, what do we do? When do we do it? How do we do it? That kind of thing. That's what we're going to talk about now. So this is your monthly finance playbook as we view it. And it starts with setting your growth targets. So this might be something that you've done in the model when you raise capital. Like, when you set out to raise capital, you build that model, you set some growth targets, you're talking to investors about how you want to reach these milestones with the raise. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is set your targets, set your forecast. So you've got your growth targets, your customer targets, your revenue targets, your hiring plan, your expense budgets. Those are targets. Like, all of this stuff you're setting up in the model. That's the first thing you got to do. Then you go execute. You know, so you set that up. Maybe we set that up at the beginning of the year. We're saying, hey, this is the plan for 2022. Now here it is, January 20th. We're executing the plan. You know, we're just running the business. We're not looking at the model. We're just running the business. We're selling customers. We're building product. We're talking to investors. We're, you know, hiring people. Whatever we're doing, we're just running our business through the month. Once the month close, you know, and we're tracking and reporting. So like, you really want to have systems in your company, and this could be in a spreadsheet, or this could all live in your financial model, or what have you. But what you want to make sure you can track all the key metrics that are helping you understand, like, are you going to hit those growth targets or not, right? Like, if you have a target for customers, of how many new customers, or how much total revenue, you know, or these expense budgets and things like that, you need to make sure that you have a system within your company to track those numbers, so that at the end of the month, you can ask yourself, well, did I hit that number or not? So tracking and reporting, this is really something that you want to do. You want to kind of set up, and then you want to be doing throughout the month or at the end of the month. Maybe you get to the end of the month, you sit down, you know, with a cup of coffee, and you make sure you can, you know, report on all your key metrics that matter, that essentially feed the financial model. So tracking and reporting, and then you're analyzing the results. So you're taking those targets which you set, you're taking that reporting which you've just done, and you're looking at it side by side to say, okay, like, did I hit the targets? If so, you know, great, I'm gonna pat myself on the back. If I missed the targets, okay, why did I miss? Like, when you're asking yourself this question to dig in, okay, it looks like I hit my revenue goal, but I didn't hit my customers goal. Okay, why is that? Well, it looks like I didn't generate enough leads, or it looks like my paid ads weren't as effective as I thought. My cost per click went through the roof, or maybe, you know, that I did a webinar and I thought I was going to get, you know, 100 leads out of it, and I only got 40. Like, whatever it is, you're trying to understand, well, what happened? Why did we fall short? And then most importantly, what are we going to do next month, or the next few months, next quarter, to change that? Like, how are we going to hit that growth target in the future? How should we adjust our plan in order to make sure that we stay on track? And so that's the tweak and repeat. So, you know, once you've analyzed those results and seen, okay, here's what I hit, here's what I missed, I think I understand why. Or maybe you understand, maybe you uncover something that you don't know. Maybe you see something and you say, well, I don't know why that is. And so then you could ask yourself, okay, well, is there anything I could do to get better visibility into that area of my business? And so it's kind of this forcing function that just forces you to, like, really refine and polish how your business is run. And as you do that, you'll really kind of supercharge the engine of that business, kind of clearing out the gunk. So you're going to tweak those targets. You're going to say, well, I hit all these, so maybe I'm going to leave them. I missed some of these, and I'm thinking they're kind of unrealistic. So let me tune those back a little bit, just so that I have a more accurate picture going forward. And then I'm going to hit the reset button, and I'm going to execute my plan. I'm going to track and report, analyze the results, and do it all over again. It's as simple or as complicated as that, but I think it can be really simple. Don't overthink it, and it's just kind of a process you can go into once a month to keep really good financial health and a good beat on your cash flow, as well as make sure you hit those targets. I like to always liken it to kind of working out. You know, if you want to work out and you want to, you know, really get strong, you don't just kind of go into the gym every day and just pump iron as much as you can until you're done and let that be. You kind of set a plan. You say, well, I'm going to do 10 reps of this weight, and I'm going to do 15 reps of that weight, and I'm going to increment over this period of time. It's very much like that with hitting really big goals within your company. You know, we want to hit $1.5 million in annual revenue by the end of the year. That won't happen unless we set goals for this month, next month, the month after that, and make sure we're trying to track along that all across the curve. So that's essentially what we're doing here in the playbook. And there's a little kind of visual that describes that. You know, so you're setting these milestones for way out in the future. You know, if you're at the seed stage, maybe you want to get to 10K in MRR in 12 months. If you're a company that's gearing up for a Series A, kind of like us, we might raise one in 12 months. We say, well, I want to get to 100K or 150K in MRR over the next 18 months. So I've set this big goal, you know, and then I am executing on that goal. I'm tracking against it. I'm analyzing, am I on track? Am I not? I'm tweaking it, and then I'm repeating, and I'm doing that over and over and over again. So I make sure that I've always got to beat on cash. I've always got to beat on how I'm doing against my growth targets. And if I start to slide and I start to fall off track, then I have a process that's forcing me to ask myself the tough questions like, shoot, can I even hit that milestone in that timeline? Do I need to raise a bridge round? Do I need to lay some people off to, to just extend my runway and make sure that we can hit it? Or what do I need to do to really lean in and make it happen? Like it's a forcing function in that way. So that's the playbook you really want to execute on a monthly basis. And I think that will ultimately, like, it'll drastically increase the chances that you hit the targets that you set for your company if you hold yourself accountable to them on a month-to-month basis in this way. So that can be a really positive thing offensively to make sure that like you achieve your goals. Alternatively, the model should be used to avoid running out of cash, and that very same process is going to drive this one as well. Like when you're looking at that playbook and you're updating the model every month, you're constantly being able to keep a beat on when you're going to run out of cash. So you can say, hey, if that's 12 months away, or if that's 18 months away, maybe that's all good. If it falls less than 6 months away, then you're kind of in a tough spot, and you say, okay, I need to get on a fundraise. So that'll help. But it's all about runway at the end of the day. Like when you're planning cash, and runway is just when the company runs out of cash. So that's however many months you have until you run out of cash. That's what you would consider as your runway. If you have runway of more than 12 months, you can generally say, hey, stay the course, no cause for concern, execute the plan. Like just stay focused on the task at hand and just keep executing. You don't really need to make any kind of real adjustments unless it's like, yeah, your runway is more than 12 months, but you feel like you're way off target on the growth side. If your runway drops to below 6 to 12 months, you should start feeling the pinch a little bit. You should start to ask yourself, okay, 6 to 12 months, I need to be gearing up for a raise here. Like, how close am I to those growth targets? Am I on track to hit them and be where I need to be, over the next, 6 months or so? Or if I'm not looking to raise, like, am I on track to be profitable, in the next few months here? If not, I need to put a plan in place right now. I need to go and get some debt. I need to go and raise a little bit of extra money from investors, maybe a note or a safe. I need to make a plan. If I don't feel confident, I'm going to be where I need to be, and that way I can avoid this last scenario, which is like your runway is less than 6 months. It's not a problem as long as you're actively raising your next round, or like you have immediate line of sight on profitability, because most companies get into the red zone before they close a new round. That's very common, but you just want to make sure it doesn't catch you off guard. So when your runway drops below 6 months, you should be actively raising your next round, or you should have immediate line of sight on profitability. If you don't, just start fundraising immediately. As soon as you find that out, start doing it, because everybody thinks that their round's only going to take a month or two, and unfortunately, that's just not the way it works for a lot of people. Usually it's like 3 to 6 months is what's common. We've raised close to 5 million, and we raised 750K in a pre-seed round a few years ago. It took me 4 months to do it, and I consider myself a pretty good fundraiser. I'm a startup finance guy. I've been in the game for a little while. I've got a good investor network. Still took me 4 months, and then we raised a $2.5 million seed earlier this year. We were fully subscribed on that round in 6 weeks, which was really fast. It still took me 4 months to get the money into the bank account. There's a lot of legal hoops you got to jump through, and diligence, and just kind of herding the cats, so to speak. So it takes a while, before the money actually hits. So plan early is the key there. Now, beyond all this, so beyond kind of the monthly playbook, you've got the model, you're editing it, you're looking at your runway, you're making some decisions there. There's this notion that in financial modeling we call scenario planning or scenario analysis, but it's really just kind of a what if type of thing. It's like whenever you build your model, you might consider that your base case scenario, and that is the forecast that you're operating under. This is the business simulation that you're saying, hey, this is what I think is going to happen, so this is what I'm making decisions based on, is this base case. Now, you may say, well, what happens if we totally crush our forecast? Like, what happens if we land a big partner or really accelerate? Maybe we ramp up our marketing budget. Like, who would we hire? What would we do? Like, how would we create kind of a best case scenario? You know, like, what does that look like? What do the milestones look like? What does the hiring look like? What does the capital requirements look like? Maybe we need to raise more money if we want to do that. Maybe we need to raise less, but that's a scenario you could explore by essentially branching off the model. If you do it in Excel, you can make a copy and kind of adjust it. It's one of the benefits of Forecastr. You can manage multiple scenarios really easily and clone them and stuff. What if we hire more salespeople? Like maybe you're a sales-driven business, you got a few salespeople, you can say, well, what if we were to hire like 2 more salespeople? How would that work? And you add them into the model, and that's going to add some cost. But then you might add some more customers because you say, well, these salespeople, they've got a quota, and I'm going to add that in. And you can ask yourself, well, does the growth outpace the expense? You know, is it going to make sense for me to hire more salespeople? Because yeah, it costs me more money, but they generate so much revenue that it's actually going to help me grow faster, and maybe I won't even need to raise more money. So test that out. Or maybe you miss revenue. You know, these are in my opinion, these are the most important scenarios to test. Like, what if things go poorly? But we all, I think, you know, as founders, like we all have to believe really confidently in our ability to execute and hit our goals and hit our objectives. We want to set lofty goals, like, and we absolutely should. It's just part of it. But the reality is, you know, a lot of times that stuff doesn't come to fruition. And if that's the case, we need to be we need to be prepared for that. We need to have a plan for that. And so one of the things I really encourage you to do is, once you've got a good base case scenario and you've got a good forecast, just like sandbag it and see what happens. You know, like say, well, like what if we just we get half the customers and our price is like the market doesn't support it, it's going to have to come in lower, and it actually takes us longer to hire some of these key hires, and we actually have to pay more for them because it's a really tough hiring market right now. And what if we go over budget? What if we go over budget on our expenses by like 10%? What happens then? Like, yeah, I said I had 15 months worth of runway, but what happens then? Maybe it's only 9 months. Am I comfortable with that? Or maybe it's 10 or 11. Like, maybe I don't hit that milestone quite as quickly. Maybe it takes me an extra 6 months. Can I survive that long in order to hit that milestone and raise that next round? Like, you really want to pressure test your business in this way and kind of force yourself to think through it. So do those downside case scenarios as well. And yeah, that's basically how it's done. So with all that in mind, I'm going to jump out of this presentation, and we're just going to jump right into what we do here at Forecastr. I'll spend maybe 15 minutes or so kind of walking you guys through what we do there, and then yeah, we should have plenty of time for questions. So first things first, I'll show you guys our financial model. So, you know, the bedrock of any good finance process is having a financial model. You can't do any of this stuff without a model. So definitely make sure you got a model. This is ours, so this is Forecastr. Just some quick orientation on it. You've got assumptions, which is where we're in now, and that is where the model actually lives. It's where we've built the model. And then you have financials, and financials is the output of the model. This is your income statement, which tells us the revenue and expenses and profit. It's a balance sheet, which shows our assets, liabilities, and our equity. And then it's a cash flow statement, very important, which shows us how much money is in our bank account and how is that money dwindling, which you can see right here. So you've got your financials, which is what you're going to use to kind of gauge that runway. You know, you can, and for growth targets as well, you can use that to say, okay, we're at about 40,000 right now in MRR. We're expecting that to get over 100K, which is our initial benchmark here in August. So that's good. That's what we're on track for. So you can use financials to kind of see that output. Assumptions is all the input. This is where we're driving the model, and this is really the important piece, where you have things like customer acquisition, like how are you acquiring customers, and what is, like, how many customers per channel, how many total customers are you going to acquire? So like, what are you holding yourself accountable to on the customer acquisition side? You know, how about on the revenue side? How are you generating revenue? You know, we do support and services. We do annual subscriptions to our software. How much revenue is coming from that? You know, how much are we going to make from services? On the people side, you know, who do we need to hire? Who do we have right now? What departments are they in? How much are we spending right now on headcount? How's that going to change into the future? Expenses are just everything that's not a person, so what other expenses do we have? General and admin expenses like rent and professional fees and HR and all that good stuff. Sales and marketing we have a lot of sales and marketing expenses. So we track all of this in our financial model. And then you can see here that our financial model isn't just a forward-looking thing, January onward, this is forward, but it also looks back, like all these darker gray. This is historical data. These are actuals. This is like our actual financials every month. And so we've got this all in here, so that Logan and I and the whole management team, we can use this to make decisions about the future. Can we afford to make that next hire? Are we on track to hit our growth targets? Kind of what's going on. And so the first thing we do is we get in the model, Logan and I, and on a monthly basis, we set our growth targets. And we really focus on revenue. So we'll get over to customer acquisition. We'll simply scroll down and start with a simple question like, okay, last 4 months, we've sold about 30 customers a month. What do we think is reasonable going forward? And you can see here, like for these next 2 months, we're actually focusing a lot on customer retention. So Logan and I said, well, we're going to focus a lot on retention. We're not going to be doing as much on acquisition. So let's reduce the goal for the next couple months. And then we'll kind of pick up where we left off at 36. And we think we can add, pretty like nice growth here to where by the end of the year, we're doing just over 60 new customers a month. Like Logan and I are just looking at that and we're just eyeballing it. We're saying, hey, that feels right to us. Like that feels reasonable to us. And we do that on a channel level as well. We'll look at Techstars and we'll say, well, okay, we're getting between 5 and 10 customers from Techstars. So this feels about right. We're getting about 10 customers a month from other networks. This feels about right. And we just kind of go through that checklist to just say, okay, yep, all these goals feel reasonable. And so they feel like good goals that we can hold ourselves accountable to as long as they achieve our purposes, like getting to $1 million in annual revenue by the time we raise the net. So for that, we might switch over to the revenue stream side. And we say, okay, well, we feel good about the customer acquisition. How do we feel about the revenue? And so we'll look at that and say, well, we closed out the year at about 38. It's actually about 39. And we're saying, okay, well, we added a lot to revenue in December. Do we think we're going to do that again in January? No, we're focused a little bit more on retention. So let's have a slower growth month there. But then we think we're going to start picking it up. And so you can see pretty big jump here in February and March, and we're scaling up pretty almost like linearly with a little bit of a slope up until 100K in August of 2022, which we think sets us up in a really good position. We want to get to 100K by August, so that if we have the opportunity, we can go ahead and kick off our next round right then, and we'll raise it by the end of the year. But if we don't get there and we need to kind of push it out, then we can, then we still have enough runway in this scenario to last through June of 2023. So we've got another opportunity to start that round in January of 2023 if we can't quite hit these numbers. And that's where some of these scenarios have come in. So this is our base case. Like you can see, we've got an annual budget here. So we just set the budget for the year. So we created an extra scenario just by cloning this one. And we locked that one down. So we're now not going to touch the annual budget scenario. And after this month, once we close out January and see where we're at, then we'll start to make some other scenarios to say, okay, well, what if we grow slower? We basically do that on an ad hoc basis, and then make some decisions from there. So we got to go through that process of saying, okay, on revenue, do we feel good about these numbers? If so, great. Like those are going to be our official numbers for the quarter or for the month, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And then we kind of roll through the other sections too. We'll look at people and just ask ourselves, are we still good with this hiring plan? Is everybody that we have in the company in the model? And that's true. So we're saying, okay, cool, that's good. What about the people that we need to hire in the short run? Are they in the model? Who do we need to hire? What are we going to pay them? So we make sure that that's all updated, and we say, okay, great, like that's in a good spot. We look over expenses, make sure that's good. And then once all of that stuff is in good place, we just go execute, right? Like we forget about the model, we put it on a shelf, we just go run the business. So the full month of January, we're selling customers, we're driving deals, we're working on retention, we're setting up some data systems, building the product, all that kind of stuff. And then when the month closes, we revisit, and that starts actually with our metrics and OKRs. So we actually keep a spreadsheet that just really acts as like a single source of truth for all the metrics across our company. And here I'll collapse all this so you guys can kind of see everything in one spot. So we do like company-wide KPIs. So we just kind of cherry pick some metrics across the company to say, hey, these are our most important metrics we're going to key in here. You know, we have a Series A scorecard. So like these are the metrics that we think are most important for us to hit and the goals for the Series A and how we're tracking against those goals. We've got all our revenue and customer KPIs. So all sorts of metrics on new customers and expansion and retention and churn, both for the SaaS and for the services that we do. So all sorts of metrics in for that. We've got a lot of growth metrics. So, you know, on the channel side, you know, we track everything by channel. So we know, okay, we got organic, we've got content marketing, strategic networks, Techstars, all these channels that may look familiar because they're in our financial model. We've got all these metrics that we're tracking on them on a monthly basis. And so I think the key point here is just having kind of a, you know, there's all sorts of data sources, you know, for metrics in your company that come from all over. Maybe it's their CRM or your database, et cetera. And so it's helpful to try to synthesize that all into one place. And that is our ultimate goal with Forecastr, is that Forecastr, you can actually just directly integrate with all these systems, and Forecastr can just cut this spreadsheet out completely and be that single source of truth. But for right now, that's not quite the case. And for anyone out there that isn't interested in using Forecastr and just wants to use a spreadsheet for their model, like, you should have a spreadsheet that has all of your key metrics. And so that way, once a month, at the beginning of the next month, we call it Metrics Monday, on the first Monday of every month. Me, Logan, Nate, one of our analysts, like, we all sit down and we just fill out this spreadsheet and make sure we have all these metrics tracked. Once we have all these metrics tracked across the whole company, then we're going to go into our financial model here, and we're going to use that to update the whole model. So, you know, over on the revenue stream side of the house, like, we would key in here and we would update like our total subscription count, right? Like, how many renewed subscribers, how many churned, that kind of thing, how many total, what's our average price, like, we're going to update all those metrics. On the customer acquisition side, you know, we're going to go in here and update how many beta affiliations did we get, how many deals, how many new customers, how many partnerships, how many leads per partnership, all those metrics that come from this spreadsheet, we're going to pump into the financial model so that we have this really good, you know, historical data that we can look at when we're trying to project the future, because that's kind of the key for projecting the future, is like really getting an idea of, well, how am I performing today, and how can I add that plus my assumptions about the future to create at least a reasonable guess as to what might occur, you know, in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So we use this to update our financial model across, really across the board. And then all the financial stuff that comes from our accounting. So you got to have really good accounting set up if you want to do this stuff well. So we use QuickBooks. We have an accountant. He's great. His name's Scott. He does our numbers every month and updates those. So then we can go in here and load in all of our financial data. So on the revenue side, you know, we can go in here and load in how much revenue did we get. On the expenses side, we can go in here and load in like how much you know, what was our database and hosting costs, like what was our payment processing costs. You know, we can load all those in. All the yellow cells here are where we've keyed in historical data, so that we can eyeball it and look back and forward and say, okay, here's what we've been spending. Does that make sense with what we expect to spend, you know, here in the future? So we load all those financials in, and then we do a forecast versus actual. So we currently do it here in this kind of spreadsheet in this presentation. This is going to be built as a feature in Forecastr as well, but we have a little report here that we generate, and we do this for our customers as well, those that are on our paid support plan. Just a forecast versus actual. Like, this is for November. We say, okay, we were projecting 29, we got 30, great, we beat the forecast. We were projecting 2.4K in costs of goods. We came in underneath that. That's awesome. You know, on the expense side, we came in under budget in the vast majority of areas. We came in about 30K under budget on the month, which is awesome. We saved a lot of money there. Ending cash was up 60 on the month. So, you know, this was a really good month for us, which is great. Some months aren't that way, right? Some months are bad, and you got to figure out why. But this one just allows us to say, okay, we're falling in the green on a lot of areas, but one thing we didn't, right? Other marketing. What's the deal there? Why did we go 4,500 over budget? How can we really, like, you know, figure that out and tighten up that forecast going forward? So we're going to ask ourselves those questions. We're going to look at what we call our financial health KPIs. What's our CAC? What's our average revenue per user? What's our LTV and our unit ratio? What about revenue growth and month-over-month growth, our burn rate, our head count? We're going to be looking at those metrics just to get kind of a read, a finger on the pulse of how the business is doing. And then we're taking all of this information and we're using it to update the financial model. So like when we talked about that other marketing, you know, we might come in here and look at other marketing and see, okay, yeah, why was it 5,000? You know, we can kind of scroll back and say, well, it was a lot less and now it's 5,000. What's the deal there? It turns out that was because we were really doing a swag box, and that's where that marketing cost got allocated. So we figured that out and said, okay, cool. That's a one-time thing. We're not worried about it. So we can go back to just assuming, you know, a pretty low forecast there because we know that's a one-time thing. Versus if we found something like, oh crap, like we actually forgot about that, and that's gonna occur going forward, we'd get in here, we'd update the model, which would add expenses, right? So we're going to be spending more money, and that's going to shorten our runway. So we'd want to go over to financials and kind of see, okay, how does that impact the runway, and do we need to, you know, make another scenario to see, you know, what the deal is there? If not, you know, if we're feeling good about it, and Logan and I are looking at the financials, which is the last thing that we do, and we say, hey, yep, we feel good about this revenue number, we feel good about that expense number, we feel good about the burn, we feel good about the runway. If we're feeling good, then we just set it and forget it, right? We forget it again, we go run the next month, and then we repeat the process. If there's anything that we find that we're not feeling good about or that we're nervous about, we either run a scenario, make an adjustment, or try to ask ourselves those tough questions. But that is what we do every month to make sure that we hit our growth targets, and to make sure that we don't run out of cash, and just to make sure that we run our company well. And so hopefully that is helpful to you. Hopefully that, you know, kind of illuminates how you guys could do this for yourself and your own business, and what the value might be. And with that, I will say that's all I got to share with you guys, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So I will open up the floor.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow, voice is really going. Thank you so much for all that content, Stephen. We did have one question I want to elevate that Mitch answered in the Q&A, but about integrations and API stuff. If you have QuickBooks and Wave, how does Forecastr work with you know, how you're tracking your financials?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you're using QuickBooks, we are rolling out an integration with QuickBooks. Can't make a direct promise on when that's going to go live, but it is the most important feature that we're working on now, and it's very close. So we certainly expect it soon. So right now, Forecastr is not integrated with anything. Soon it will be integrated with QuickBooks, which just means that you can sync it up and log in with QuickBooks. It'll pull in, you know, your chart of accounts, or like all your line items there, and you can tell Forecastr what's what. You can say, well, these 4 expenses, bucket those as sales and marketing, and these 5 different line items, you can put those in as salaries and benefits. Like, you're essentially telling the model how to map things between, you know, QuickBooks and Forecastr. And once you've done that, each month, it'll just automatically map everything up. And so, you know, when you get in and you see your historical data here, all of this will just be powered from QuickBooks, all this stuff in the dark gray, and that'll be side by side with your actuals. If you're using Wave, we don't currently have an integration under development for Wave. After QuickBooks, the next integration that we'll likely do is Xero, the other accounting software that's out there, but not quite sure what we're going to do there. So with Wave, I'm not sure when we would have an integration, to be completely honest. We are going to be planning on building out a CSV import tool at some point in the future as well. And that'll really give us the opportunity to say, you know, taking data from anywhere. So if you take it, download it to CSV, you'd be able to import it into Forecastr and do the same thing I was just talking about. You just have to do that once a month rather than do it once and kind of set it and forget it like it is once we're integrated. So that's a great question.
Awesome. I did forget to mention at the beginning of this, if anybody has any questions, there is a Q&A functionality and a chat functionality for GoToWebinar. Feel free to use those. Mitch and I answered a couple kind of in stream that were pretty close. But here we got some questions coming in that I'll serve up to you right now. All right, we have Kanat Isbek asks, is using Forecastr enough if a SaaS startup uses only this service to build and manage financial model, or additional materials will we need to see a better picture? It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I would say Forecastr should be plenty. I mean, with the exception of maybe a spreadsheet. You know, I mean, like we use Forecastr for everything related to like our financial health and our financial picture and outlook, our growth targets and our projections and things like that. And our customers, that's typically the case as well. So I think it's really designed to be kind of a single source of truth, or like you know, your operating system when it comes to finance within your company. But because Forecastr doesn't integrate with everything and it doesn't do everything we want to do yet, we do think it's nice to have kind of a spreadsheet or something like that where you can track all these metrics, and that way you know, you can take these numbers and put them in a dashboard like we do. Like we've got some dashboards that we have here that we don't have in Forecastr. So I would say for right now, you know, spreadsheets are always good to kind of hang around. I mean, just because they're so flexible. But we are going to be building custom reporting directly into Forecastr, so you can graph anything you want and save them as reports. We'll be building, you know, the analytics like that exist here, forecast versus actual directly into Forecastr. So I think Forecastr should be the only thing that you would need. And certainly for SaaS companies, you know, we're a SaaS company, we work with a lot of SaaS companies. I think it's a really good fit.
Yeah, two things I'd build on there, because this is something we get with Gust launch as well, is that single source of truth is very important for you and your business. However, when you engage with external parties, you're going to find, especially investors, I've found investors have very weird preferences in terms of how they want to receive material. So you'll usually want, and I'll throw this over to you, Steve, in a bit, like a means to keep your source of truth up to date in the way that works the best for you, but then also have that flexible enough that if an investor insists on a Dropbox data room, we have like an export all your documents feature where it's like, okay, I would love if the investor would sign on to a read-only, you know, link that I send them so they could view the entire history of my corporate back office, but they're demanding me send them a zip file. So it's like, so I can send a zip file. I'm assuming Forecastr has some similar stuff like that to export your financial model and things, right?
Yeah, totally. Yep, you can export the model to Excel. That's definitely critical for, you know, a lot of investors. They still maybe want to see it in Excel. So I think that's well said. So yes, that is important, and yeah, definitely make sure you keep and maintain a data room. That's something I always tell people too. Is that like people a lot of times think of a data room for fundraising, and that's true. It is important for fundraising, but you actually really should just keep a data room up to date all the time, and then you're just always ready to either go and do a raise, or who knows, maybe you have a potential acquisition offer that comes your way, and you're already ready. So that's something that we do at least is keep and maintain a data room at all times, so that when investors do ask you for a lot of kind of your financial information and that kind of stuff, you've got it there in one place.
Awesome. We don't actually have a question, but we have just a shout of praise. Kimber, who has been with us a couple of events, is kind of saying in the Q&A, I'll post it in the chat too, in case not everybody can see the Q&A. Kimber's a great both Gust fan and Forecastr fan, but she's basically saying that using us together, she feels like she's light years ahead of, you know, getting their stuff set up. And she produces some additional contact resources in case anybody wants to look into that. Thank you so much, Kimber. I think you're one of our favorite customers, and Forecastr seems to be as well. One thing I wanted to dig into on the other question, because I know it comes up every time we do a presentation, is the ability to model different kinds of revenue streams. We always seem to get a question of like, oh, can I do this for SaaS? Or like, what if I'm transactional? Or what if I'm sponsorship based? So you can maybe dig into a little bit of that in terms of like, not every business is the same. We all want to be subscription businesses, it seems like anymore, but that's not always the reality.
That's right. Every business is a special snowflake. It's totally unique. And so, no, but it is true to some extent. I mean, like every business is different. You know, every business has their own nuance and their own kind of unique way of doing things and that kind of thing. So that's definitely something that Logan and I, recognize, and that's one of the things that building a few hundred financial models teaches you. I'm not gonna say quickly because it takes a while to do that, but it teaches you. Which is that there is a lot of nuance when it comes to building a financial model and simulating a business. Ultimately, if you want to simulate a business, the better, the more flexible that is, and the more like tuned in and custom that simulation is, the better it's going to be at predicting the future. So we did make Forecastr with that in mind. It's very flexible, and we kind of have a have your cake and eat it too type of system where it's very structured, right? You have these structures like customer acquisition and revenue. And if I want to add something like a funnel on customer acquisition, I get to choose from a set of templates. Maybe it's paid ads funnel, maybe it's conferences funnel, maybe it's partnerships funnel. So I can choose these different things. And if I decide to build them, and I'm gonna get this little webinar thing out of my way here so I can do this. It'll look kind of like this. So I'll take one that's already built. So I can build, a funnel, which will have like a set of metrics and stuff like that. And then if I need to customize it, I can do that. And so this thing got hung over. There it goes. So if I want to customize this, I can add metrics, I can delete metrics, I can edit metrics, and I can really kind of bend it to my will. So if it's good out of the box, which is how this comes, then I don't need to do anything. But if it's not, I can customize it to my needs. And the same is true for really all aspects of Forecastr, but specifically the revenue is where there's so much variation, because everybody has it a little bit differently. So on the revenue side, it's a similar setup where you have a whole list of templates, services, transactional e-commerce, marketplace, subscription, of all these different revenue types. And then within that, you have a bunch of different templates. You've got like if you're a fixed fee, subscription, like you charge a set price every month. There's a template for that. If you do like unit-based pricing, maybe you're per seat, or you have some kind of unit that you're pricing along. We have that, or usage-based pricing. Maybe you have annual or quarterly pricing. We offer that as well. So there's all these kind of templates you can choose from, but then you can customize it from there. And that's one of the things that that our analyst team is great to lean on for. They're expert financial modelers, and they'll basically help understand your business and understand what you want to do with the model, and then they'll help you use Forecastr to make that a reality. So
I think that's another great observation just in looking at it. I think a lot of times startups are trying to be innovative, both with their business models as well as the product that they're bringing to market. And people are flocking to startups from very non-traditional backgrounds. It's not every founder that's had another exit or knows all this terminology. So working with a tool that actually presents you with, like, if you're saying like, oh, well, what kind of revenue is this? Am I a marketplace model? Am I a per transaction model? Am I just selling goods? Is this a subscription model? Having a system that actually says like, hey, if you're this kind of thing, here's a bunch of other inputs you should be aware of. And it's like, oh, people think of subscriptions. It's like, well, you should also think of churn, and you should also think of cost of goods sold. You should also think of hiring, like in terms of customer support. And I think that's really often where early financial models kind of fall down, where a lot of people focus on revenue. If I can grow it blank percent a month seems to make a lot of sense. Let's drag it out into the right, and everything's amazing. But it's like, oh, each time you do that, there's a ton of additional considerations that you should really take into account. We did have a question, I think some clarity on the OKR and metrics spreadsheet you were sharing and the exports from Forecastr. Those are two separate things, or it's the same thing?
The exports from Forecastr, they said?
Yeah, I think they're wondering if this spreadsheet comes out of Forecastr as an export, or is this something that you've built separately on the side and use it to work with Forecastr?
That is a great question. So this is a spreadsheet of our own design, so to speak. So this is not come as an export from Forecastr. This is something that we've built. Is this something I have templated? I guess I've templated, yeah. So if you don't have any kind of a spreadsheet to use for metric tracking and you want one, I have this kind of as in a clean version that just kind of has some of the some of the structures and stuff set up, but you can kind of fill it in with your own metrics. So if that would be helpful to you, I'd be happy to share that template link. Otherwise, yes, it is something that we've developed, and the exports from Forecastr currently don't look this pretty, but we're working on that, from an Excel spreadsheet perspective as well. And I do think they'll be moving kind of in this direction, but they are different.
And it's worth saying, to promote your own self, their onboarding procedure is very, like, every person we've sent to them loves the onboarding procedure because it gives them like that extra perspective on their business of like, we're all startups in some way or another. Forecastr's a startup too. They've made great strides over the last couple of years. They're always building out new functionality, but they're also coupling it with a services component, which I would recommend in general is something that gives startups, a huge boost up in establishing a foothold in a marketplace. You can provide that level of expertise. You can share additional resources. We do it from the Gust side. It's like we build, like cap table modeling, convertible nonsense spreadsheets to just help founders figure out where they're at, as while we're also improving our tools and making things like that. So check them out. I think we're nearly at the top of the hour. Stephen, Mitch, do you have any parting words? I think we got all the Q&A too.
Cool. Well, I'll just say this, if you don't have a financial model, or if you just want a better one, I'd say we'd love to help with that. And honestly, that goes for whether or not you want to become a Forecastr customer or not. I think like ultimately we'd love to have you as a customer. Like, I think we have a great platform. I think we do great work for you. But regardless, like, we're in the game of helping founders get great financial models. And if it's one thing that I've learned over the 10 years that I've been in the startup game, is that building companies is really, really hard. And it takes a village. It takes, a lot of people to do it, and it takes leaning on people that know things that maybe you don't. And so I lean on a lot of other founders for help in areas that are not finance, and so I always just put ourselves up to say, hey, if you need some expert advice, if you have a question, that kind of thing, I want you to know that the door is always open. We'd love to help. And specifically because you guys are with Gust, if you do want to work with Forecastr, you get 25% off, which is awesome. So you get a big discount on your first year annual subscription. And like Ryan said, there is a white glove onboarding with experts that our customers really, really appreciate, and I think you will too. So just appreciate your time, and thanks for listening. Hopefully it was helpful, and see you next time.
Awesome. Yeah, in about a couple hours, once the recording wraps up, everybody will get a follow-on email that links to both a resource center we have detailing a bit about Forecastr and us, our relationship, and this kind of talk. I'll upload slides if you can send them to me, Stephen, to keep it up. Look out for future events. We do kind of 3 themes with Forecastr. One around how to use your financial model in the fundraising conversation, almost the flip of what this one is about, how you present it to investors. Stephen and Logan have had a lot of experience pitching investors, and it is the same model in a different world with different considerations. And then we also have just basically building your financial model 101, which I think will probably be the next in the lineup, which really goes from, if you're starting out in the very beginning, how do you go for it? Like Stephen mentioned, we do have a 20% discount we've negotiated with Forecastr. The links to sign up for that will be in the emails. Mitch has already posted some links to onboarding anyway. We've got your email addresses. We'll share them so that they'll know if you're coming from us, so you can get that discount as well. And I think that's it. Thank you for putting up with my scratchy voice and hobbled brain. Mitch, Stephen, it's wonderful to see you. If you're not in the Gust launch audience, I know we have a blend of people from our larger free platform as well as launch customers. Also check out Gust Launch. That's the platform we run. If you're thinking about if your company is in the idea stage at the moment or early on, we do for your corporate back office what Forecastr does for financial models. We provide everything you need. We have tons of support, community, obviously partner networks. We're really just trying to help founders focus on their business, take care of the stuff that they need to do, and hopefully build more investable companies. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. And thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.